Is this thing level? Are we on an angle? We might be. We might be. Living in an old home with uneven floors, you never really know what's gonna happen. We are talking all about spring today, spring books. I keep saying spring is a mindset, and it might not actually feel like spring here yet in Canada, but we're talking all about what we're reading this spring. I have my most darling little Peter Rabbit mug with me today with some peppermint tea. I hope you all go brew yourself a nice little warm mug of coffee or tea or hot chocolate, whatever tickles your fancy. And let's talk about books. I have a healthy little stack here of spring reads that I would recommend, and I have read all of them because I'm not trying to recommend to all of you things that I don't personally trust. And I read a lot of books. I read over 100 books a year. I've been a lifelong reader, so let's just get on into it. Now I tried to include some different genres here, whether you like romance or mystery or cozy fantasy. I don't have horror. Does horror fall in the seasonal category other than fall? I don't know. But first I have Murder at the Lakeside Library, and this is, who is this by? Holly Danvers. I looked her up online and couldn't find much about her. Now listen, I love a cozy mystery. Some of my friends may refer to them as my grandma books, but I loved my grandma, so I take it as a compliment. Anyhow, Murder at the Lakeside Library is part of a, I think, 4-book series. I've read all of them, of cozy mysteries, and they all take place at this little adorable lakeside library that's in this tiny little cabin, standalone, that this woman who moves back home to her little lakeside hometown begins to run again. Little family library. There's a book club in their town, and in each book, somebody either turns up, dead, or missing. Mystery ensues. They're not spooky at all. At all. They're so cozy. You're just watching the mostly like women in the town intermingle and figure out what on earth is going on. Where are these people going in this small town where mischief like this doesn't happen? And this one in particular is very spring, as I feel like you can kind of tell by the cover. You'll kind of find that they take place, you know, one in fall, one in winter, one in spring, one in summer. And I love that. I love seasonal reading, and this is one of my favorite cozy mystery series ever. I love books. If you're watching this, you probably do too, or maybe you're interested in getting back into reading. And I love a book that takes place in a bookish setting, whether it's like a romance at a bookshop or a lakeside library. I literally want to move here. I want to move here. I thrifted this book for $7.99. That's kind of expensive. Years ago, and well, not that many years ago. It's a relatively new series, but I thrifted it like a month after it came out, had no idea about it, and have been following the releases ever since. I cannot recommend this enough. Even if you're like, I don't know about cozy mysteries or mystery or what that involves, this is a really good starter because it's not too weird. It's still very modern, and it has really likable characters and such a cozy spring setting. So that is the first book that I would recommend for spring. And you know what? I was yapping. I was saying how it doesn't feel like spring yet here. And it's funny because the last couple days it's been snowing. We had snow yesterday, and it feels so balmy today. Now I'm like sweating a little bit with my tea and sitting near a window because I think it's +6 degrees today Celsius, which when you've been dealing with snow and freezing weather feels so warm. Next on my spring reading list for you all is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. I cannot wait for her next release, which is coming soon, I think. Anyways, this is one that I see lesser talked about, and I happened upon this one. Okay, this one I paid $2.29 for, a much better thrift deal. Anyways, I happened upon it and I was like, oh, I loved her book, Carrie Soto is Back, or Strikes Back, whatever that one was called, and have really enjoyed some of her reads, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna pick this one up. It is so interesting, and now there's nothing particularly springish about it, but I think that a nice romance, a light-hearted but also emotional romance is nice in the springtime. It's just a nice feeling, and this one is so interesting. It's about this woman whose husband goes missing from like a helicopter crash, and it's, you know, following her through decades of her life. She's engaged or married, I can't remember, I think engaged. Anyway, she's moved on with her life, she has a new partner, and her ex-husband, who's been missing for over a decade, turns back up. It's that debacle of her still having, of course, feelings for her ex, but now she has this new person in her life. And I just really love this one because it feels really real. And I watch Gabby Shay, and I don't know how to say your last name, girl. I read this, I think after she had recommended it, and really resonated with what she said about it, in saying that it just feels so real. It feels really real. It's not too fluffy per se or following the book talk tropes. It is just like real life. This woman is faced with some real life emotional decisions, and when it comes to relationships, it's nice to see that represented in books, especially if you've been through some different life situations, and life isn't always like, oh, you find your perfect person and instant chemistry and happily ever after. Sometimes things are a little bit more complex, and there's just something springish about it, okay? I know I'm saying like, oh, it's emotional. So is Pride and Prejudice, and we think that's springish. So One True Love's Taylor Jenkins Reid. And this one will come as no surprise. And listen, I recommend this in all seasons of the year, but hear me out, I'm getting ahead of myself. The Spellshop, Sarah Beth Durst. This spring, or maybe it's summer, sometime in the warm months, we're getting the second book, which I was so lucky to read an advanced reading copy of through NetGalley, which is called The Enchanted Greenhouse. Okay, so start with this while you can. It does have beautiful sprayed edges. And one of my friends on Instagram recommended this to me, and I was like, how have I not heard of this? Look at the little kitten, the little angel wings. Ah, I love it. I love this world so much, and I'm so glad there's even more coming. So the Spellshop and the new book coming out, The Enchanted Greenhouse, it follows interconnected. You can read them totally standalone. They don't interconnect too much, just same world, mention of some of the same characters, which I love when book series do that so much. But in these, we get magic, we get cooking, baking. Oh, the coziest baking. I want to eat all the food in these books. I do. We get romance, but I really just love that it has strong female characters represented in that. And I think we lack that sometimes in books, especially when it comes to fantasy where, you know, you get like the damsel in distress. I don't know. I like a strong female character. So I feel like I didn't even explain what either of the books are about. Just know that there are talking plants, a revolution. They are helping their town. The new one's fresher in my head, The Enchanted Greenhouse, where they're reviving a magical greenhouse with sentient plants, with her magic, this statue, this librarian who was frozen into a statue for using potentially magic, and how she is unthawed and sent to this weird reclusive man gardener's a little island, and starts to help him bring back, the sorcerer who used to live there, his magic to bring back the plants and the greenhouses. And there's greenhouses for winter and summer and the stars, and it's so wonderful. It's so wonderful. They're baking donuts and scones. There's talking plants. What more could you want? So spring, and keep your eyes peeled. Again, I don't know when it is. I want to say June. Perhaps it's more summer. The Enchanted Greenhouse is coming out, and I can't wait. I cannot wait. I don't buy many books. Y'all know I don't buy many new books, I should say. And typically only after I've read it first through the library or something. And of course, I've already read the arc of The Enchanted Greenhouse. That I will absolutely. Sarah Beth Durst, take all my money. I cannot wait to support her and have it along with this one. They are books that I will reread time and time again. And the magic is just, I cannot thank those of you who recommended this book enough for sparking my love of whatever niche genre this magical, cozy fantasy is. And it's so interesting too, because I'm relatively new to reading fantasy. I started with like ACOTAR and Crescent City and kind of was like finding my footing of, okay, what do I like in the genre? And heard about Legends and Lattes and was introduced to cozy fantasy. And I liked Legends and Lattes, but it wasn't quite what I was looking for. And then I found In the Company of Witches, which I recommend in my fall TBR by Orly Wallace, and When the Crow's Away by her as well. And I was like, oh, this is it. And I've been looking to try and replicate it and find the same vibes, and the Spellshop, it has it. It's my kind of cozy fantasy. And it wouldn't be my spring recommendations without this beautiful book. And I was tempted to bring all three out. My partner got me the special editions for Christmas, which I have been yearning over. It's the Magnolia Parks series by Jessa Hastings, and how beautiful. These books are so special to me, not only because I read them through a very difficult time in my life, dealing with grief, and they were a really welcome distraction, but again, similar to the Taylor Jenkins Reid book, they feel so real life. So I am going to say these were popularized online because people said they give Gossip Girl vibes. They give, you know, it's a rich group of socialites in England, young adults, and they're navigating their friend group. However, I will say, and I know it might seem like a bit of a spoiler, but it's discussed, if not on the back, really early on in the book, that there is infidelity involved in some of the main characters' relationships. And I think that off-puts a lot of people from the first book. However, if you read deeper, if you get through the books, I want to cry thinking about it. You understand why it happens. And again, that's just not that I can. However, it's so real life. It's so real life in learning what happened to this person to provoke this act, which was not okay and not an okay coping mechanism, but to understand what these people are going through. It's just so beautiful. It's so beautiful. I love the way it's told. I loved Gossip Girl growing up. I'm not wealthy, so I don't know, maybe it's just a fascination of clinging on to how other people can live their lives. But these books, they have my heart. There's Magnolia Parks and then there's Daisy Hates. I also love Daisy Hates, which are again like interconnected worlds. You kind of have to read Magnolia Parks to read Daisy Hates, but anyhow, Magnolia Parks. It is so spring feeling. It is just reading about a group of friends living their life. Again, it's not necessarily that it takes place in spring, it takes place throughout the year, but I adore this book. I adore them so, so much, and I have no one to talk about them with. And I think about them all the time, and I cannot wait just to have more in this universe. I think we're done, right? The Magnolia Parks portion, but I believe we're getting more Daisy Hates. I will be impatiently waiting. And then I have a few wild cards in here that I want to talk about with spring reads that maybe you wouldn't necessarily pick up off the shelf or think to read. They're not maybe as contemporary, but nevertheless important. And this is The Tale of Castle Cottage by Susan Wittig Albert. Anyhow, it tells the tale of Beatrix Potter, who wrote Peter Rabbit. And it's just a magical little world in which we see all of the critters that live in the area, and we, you know, see her going through her different relationships with different people. And I don't know how true to real life it necessarily is. It's kind of like loosely inspired. I know some of it is fairly true, but obviously, you know, the cozy mystery aspects of some people winding up dead and murdered, not so much. And I just adore it, and you can tell by like the cover. Now I will say these read a little different than other cozy mysteries. If you read that genre, it's a little slower, but that's what I am learning to love in books, is just slowing down, like I do in my life with books, is just slowing down, appreciating the process, taking in the atmosphere and the environment. And I love Beatrix Potter. I love all things Beatrix Potter. I just watched the 2006 Miss Potter for like the 5th time this month, last night. It's free on YouTube Movies. There's just something so incredible about her life. And I love that she was a woman where at the time you don't focus on your career as an unmarried woman in your 30s. And they talk about that in a lot of her biographies and movies and whatnot, and how she was like, I may come from a family of wealth, but I want to put my work out there. I want to tell stories. I want to go out on my own. I want to branch out. And I adore that so, so much. I think she's such an incredible woman, and she lived in a very different time than me, but a lot of it feels very relevant to how things sometimes currently feel. And we need to remember people like Beatrix Potter, who was a beautiful author, scientist, naturalist. I adore her. So thus I must say, there is probably like 10 maybe or so books in this series. And while it's not written by Beatrix Potter, it just fills you in that world of Beatrix Potter and her little woodland critters that she has in her area. And I don't know, I really enjoy it, and it's perfect for spring. And then my partner is going to be so happy if he somehow sees this. And I am using one of his copies because the man has probably over 20 different copies of The Hobbit, and I thought this one was really pretty. But I just read The Hobbit for the first time recently, and of course I've seen the movies, but being with someone who The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings is so important to him and that whole world, I wanted to read it too. And it's technically a children's book, which I wasn't aware of for quite some time. Anyhow, this was so whimsical and magical and mystical and really easy to read as well. I wasn't sure going into it because I read previously Baron and Luthien, which was going in off the deep end. I annotated it for my partner for Valentine's Day, and this was such a walk in the park compared to Baron and Luthien, which is so deep in like the Silmarillion lore. Anyhow, don't even worry about that. Don't get overwhelmed. You can read The Hobbit and have such a great time with it. Following the story of these little hobbits and them on their journey, it really just felt like a warm hug, and it felt like the perfect book to read transitioning from winter to spring. I don't know, I really enjoyed it and I really want to read the other Lord of the Rings books now. I know that this one is like special in its kind of originality, and when you look into how we got the Hobbit and then Lord of the Rings from what Tolkien wanted to write, it's all very interesting. Anyways, the Hobbit is so whimsical and I was really intimidated thinking about reading it, and I don't want anyone else to feel intimidated, or if it's outside of your usual wheel of genres, which it totally is outside of mine. I had such a wonderful time, and I switched between reading physical book and audiobook, and the audiobook narration was so enjoyable as well, and it was a relatively quick read. I really enjoyed it. It felt to me like how I felt reading Harry Potter for the first time as a child, and that's a feeling I love to chase. So this was really special and just felt really springish. I think it would also be a good read in the fall, but I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of crossover with those transitional seasons from cold to hot. I just can't recommend it enough. If you've been thinking about it or you haven't been, just take a chance on it. Give it a try. My goodness, I'm gonna need to crack a window. It is so toasty. And you know what? I'm fine that my tea has got a little cold because it's helping to regulate a little bit. Oh gosh, I'm just so excited for spring. And while I wanted to mainly focus on general fiction and more like YA and adult reads, I'd be remiss to not talk about my favorite childhood books about spring and all the magic that they bring. And I didn't bring them all with me, but I did bring my little stack of a couple of my Beatrix Potter books. And listen, everyone talks about Peter Rabbit, but they often forget about all of the rest of the books. Squirrel Nutkin, for example, one of my favorites. Squirrel Nutkin is such a little devil, really, which is funny. I gave some other copies that I thrifted of these to a friend of mine with 2 young daughters, and I was telling her about them, and she was like, you know what, maybe we hold off on Squirrel Nutkin until she's out of her little rebellious phase. I was like, you know what, perhaps that is a good idea. But I think revisiting your favorite childhood books, whatever they may be, is so special in the springtime. For me, it's of course Peter Rabbit. I've got Peter Rabbit candles around here, some little Peter Rabbit plushies that my partner has found for me. Of course, my mug, my lamp, my blankets. I love Peter Rabbit year round. I love Beatrix Potter, but there's some other also wonderful ones. Bramley Hedge has a book called Spring Story. They have one for each season, and I should have brought it with me, but I didn't. And I'm sad now, but Bramley Hedge, if you don't know, very similar vibes to Peter Rabbit. These little mice that live in a tiny little world. Think like Arietti, Secret World of Arietti. And I love the spring story. I love to read the seasonal little books, and it just reminds me of childhood and translates so well and cozy into adulthood. I have had my eye, I have, on the Spring Story puzzle by Bramley Hedge that I've seen floating around. I know you can get on like but I'm trying to hone it in. I don't need everything that I love, of course, but I do already have that book, and I love A Spring Story by Bramley Hedge. Anyhow, that's what I would recommend you to read this spring. Now, I am thinking that this weekend I might come up with my own spring TBR of what I'd like to read. I just am so hesitant to recommend a book when I haven't read it yet. So I wanted to talk about ones that I have read and would totally reread, and some that I will be rereading this spring. So I hope that this gave you a little inspiration. Let me know what you're reading for spring, because again, I need to build my own spring TBR and figure that out. But I'd love to know. I hope that you get some inspiration to read some of this magic and whimsy. Gosh, and I'm going to head on out of here and open the window, enjoy the spring breeze. I can't wait. I'm so happy spring is here. One of my favorite times of year. Anyways, I'm gonna head on out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, chatting with me on here. It is, again, I know I say it every time, but it is so wonderful and so special, and I love to get to have more than 30 seconds to get to talk to y'all. So I will catch y'all next time.